ahead and start. We are missing Julie, who I know is on vacation, and Bob Kerr. Do we have any public comments, Richard?
I did not have any that came in unless Susan had something come in at the very last minute that she saw, but I didn't have anything.
No, I didn't have anything.
All right, then. Item number 3, approval of minutes of regular meeting held on June 15th, 2020. Any comments, changes, adjustments, glowing notes of approval? Because those were very excellent minutes. Amy, thank you very much.
Make a motion we accept minutes from last meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the meeting minutes from June 15th. The motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. I didn't actually catch who seconded it.
I seconded it.
Okay, so Tom, thank you. Does anyone have any further discussion on the minutes from June 15th? All those in favor that we approve the minutes of the regular meeting from June 15th, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed say no. The motion carries unanimously, and we will approve the minutes of the regular meeting held on June 15th, 2020. Item number 4, approval of the financial report. Richard?
Okay, without running through as a line-by-line recitation, we do have a note on the bottom of the first page about the sales tax that was received and transferred on July 8th. That will show for next month. And, now that we have down that we're receiving the sales tax early in the month, we're going to try to continue those notes going forward, unless there's some technical reason why we don't have it in time for the EDC. The tax pool interest rate for the month was at 0.21%. It seems to be, for at least the time being, generally stabilized around 0.2%. So we'll keep an eye on that. Technically, that can actually drop into a negative amount. And while it's not likely, it's something we want to keep our eyes on. I think that's something that's been discussed before, but if not, I want to make sure everyone's aware of that. Were there any questions on the specific expenditures throughout the month? I can't tell you. Go ahead.
Now that you've mentioned it, do you and Anthony have a plan that MEDC and the city could follow if interest rates were to be negative? I assume that if it was tax pool, it would also be regular bank accounts.
Well, yeah. The backup plan there for anything else would be to move it to a non-interest bearing account and look at other options that might be available out there, because even a non-interest bearing account, I'm concerned the banks would start to charge different fees on them as well. So in that scenario, there may almost be no way really to, I don't know if I want to say the word hide, but shield the money to some level of loss with that. But Anthony is, as it has gotten lower, he continues to scan for options on that. And so, and that's what our most recent discussion is on that. So if it drops below, below 0.2 and especially below 0.15, then we'll be looking more closely what happens to be available at that time.
Right, because also with bank accounts, then we run the risk of not being FDIC insured, which obviously we aren't in tax pool, but I think it's different if we're in a bank that's having a stressful situation rather than an investment account.
Right, unfortunately, we're just in a situation that isn't one that people had really foreseen, and existed on the theoretical end of my economics courses when I took those, and it's unfortunately we get to participate in it, but it is something that Anthony and I discuss at least once every other week, is just a matter to make sure we're paying attention to it.
Right. Well, it's not completely theoretical, because Switzerland has started it. I want to say they started it last year, maybe the year before, and then obviously Japan in the 90s, I want to say. So they're certainly big experts in it.
Good point there. Yeah. So, but we'll continue to keep our eyes on that, and if it starts to slip down into that range, we'll be looking to take what action needs to be that to protect the funds best possible.
Great. Principal protection is obviously the main thing.
Yes. And so,
I think there was only one expenditure for the entire month, and Anthony said that it was the last payment on Frida's remote.
right, on the
working.
remote access as we were. And I will say, I don't know that it'll show, I don't think it'll show up as an EDC expenditure, but just in case, assure that should happen. We have changed the way within the city this month that we're doing remote access, which will actually be less of a potential cost going forward to the city, especially if we do have to do a significant number of remote access applications. And it's not every employee, that will be that way, but just the ones who would need that kind of access. So again, we're just trying to stay ahead of possibilities.
All right. Any other questions on the financial report? Otherwise, I'll entertain a motion to approve the financial report.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the financial reports as presented. This motion is debatable, amendable, and requires a majority vote. Any further discussion on this item? All those in favor of approving the financial reports as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. The motion passes unanimously, and we will approve the financial report. Item number 5, update on downtown development planning.
Okay. Some of what was funded by the MEDC for the downtown development planning process include the draft of an RFQ that'll be used to procure the design services for the project. The draft that Walter provided is attached, and it still needs some editing and some cleaning up. We thought it was a good start to show the EDC board tonight. Staff needs some direction from the MEDC on the timing of the release of the RFQ. One of our thoughts on this is that we believe we can have this ready to be released and published before the next MEDC meeting. And so if the MEDC board is agreeable to give the board president the final approval, we could go ahead and be ready to publicize and push that out as soon as it's ready, as opposed to coming back with the final copy for the board in the August meeting. If that's what the board would prefer, obviously we'll be happy to do that in that way. Some of what is still needed for this is to provide a better summary, better explanation for some of the work, and some more specifics for some of the tasks that are to be delivered. And then I wanted to go ahead and turn the floor over to Dave McCorkadale so he can cover some of the specifics since he worked more closely with Walter and on that project itself there. So Dave.
Evening, MEDC. You see here on the screen, I'm sure sort of the next steps. Again, as Richard said, we got the RFQ document from Walter, and it's a good start, especially for an organization kind of from the outside looking in. Obviously, the quality or just the content, and in particular, some of the nuance that really makes a project is known by a city like us, where it may not be as well known to Walter and his team. So we're going to start with what they've got, which is a good template. And you see here some of the things that roll into the downtown project. And, I kind of purposely put the streetscape stuff last because it's what we think of, and it's what we certainly all, kind of imagine in our mind is this streetscape and the public space improvement. But some of the things that are going to go into this downtown RFQ plan, we want the design piece of it. We just need, and we're not going to solve all of these pieces on it. What we need to do is just be cognizant of these. What we're looking at on the MEDC portion is the streetscape and public space improvements. But as the city kind of more broadly looks at the project in downtown, we've got the dot work on 149, of course, all the utilities and infrastructure, the economic development side, which really is MEDC, obviously, and that kind of feeds into sort of this fiscal analysis of downtown and really, in the context of the city more broadly, but figuring out if we want to generate types of businesses downtown, what kind of businesses, what does the data tell us that we want to put down there? We may say, well, we need a shop, or we need a restaurant, or we need a, some type of an office space, or, whatever it is. But, what we really ought to be doing, as a city, is looking at the tax value of the parcels downtown and figuring out, okay, which one of these is able to support the kind of investments that the city wants to make in downtown, and how do you get those in? And that's all, it's economic development, it's planning, it's real estate, kind of all in one. So I'll be happy to answer any specifics that you guys have.
So the role of the president is just to basically sign the document that city staff puts together at the end of the day, saying this is what we're asking for when we're going out for the RFQ.
Right, and I think kind of as kind of what we wanted to do was essentially to to talk with the board one last time and say, hey, we think we're all on the same page. We've talked about this multiple times, and at the same time, with Dan and Arnett, who came over from PNC, being new on the board, we do want to make sure that we're on the same, page one last time before we, get the document out. And again, if, the timing of it is such that it's within a week or two, if you guys would like to see the RFQ, before it goes out, and you're certainly, able, that's really a decision for you guys.
Looking at it, I mean, it seems like it has the main design elements that we've talked about. I'm a little bit unsure of page 38 of or 37 of our packet, which is, says design concepts 2 on the top. It's basically mostly College Street, where it has planters, crosswalk, or artificial turf lawn, and fire pit and seating. I'm not sure if that's exactly
right. And I think, yeah, absolutely. And I think, kind of in, both in the sort of executive summary in the text, part of that text needs to be adding some context to those images, kind of as a way to explain, what they are, number one, kind of explain where those images came from.
right.
And number two, kind of explain, not everything in this image is literal, but, the board liked the feel of space in this image.
Right. Well, because I'm not sure that one that works with the image on the next page, which has more of the green space that the board decided in our workshop that's where we were going. The one before is the hardscape version.
Yeah.
Like all hard, all permanent, whereas I thought we had talked about a little bit more.
Yeah, taking it out.
More flexible.
Right. And again, I've not edited Walter's version at all because it's
Okay.
And, rather than ask him for the editable version, I'm just going to start with the Word doc because I don't, like, the native size of that is something like 12 by 14, which I'm sure is a popular paper size somewhere, but nowhere that I've ever been. So I'm just going to start with, I do like, and it's a small, detail. I'm partial to the landscape formatting, if you guys are okay.
Mm-hmm.
An RFQ in a format.
I'm not sure that I've seen enough of them to really have a preference either way.
Gotcha. It's a design world issue. So
what is staff's recommendation on the timing of releasing the RFQ?
We would like to be able to get this out as quickly as possible. And if we're able to get it out a week and a half, 2 weeks ahead of the August meeting, it helps us be on a timeline that we could potentially have it back early enough to not force us to kick it another month down the road. Because,
Right.
once we send it out, it's about a 3-week process before we finalize a cutoff date for things coming in. Then there's some time to to look those over. We'll have to talk at a future meeting about the evaluation process and have that lined up before they're ready to have evaluation of the RFQs. And what we're trying to avoid is finding out that we, because of the timeline, missed by just a matter of a couple days or a week getting it onto an agenda, and then we're waiting 3 or 4 more weeks, especially with the holidays looming, November, December potentially. So we're certainly, our goal is, if we could get this out early to mid-August, then we believe we'd be able to, if not at the September meeting, definitely by the October meeting, have had the interviews done and have something that the board could probably be in a position to recommend, at the October meeting, certainly no later than November. Because we meet once a month, every week kind of becomes critical in that timeline.
And normally we don't meet in November or December,
Oh, yeah.
I believe.
So. Yeah, and then on top of that, just add the uncertainty that's out there in the world right now. One of the things that we found out from the city perspective, back in March, we put in a water line bid right at the start of the pandemic. It had one firm that bid on it with a very high price. We ended up having to rebid that. It's like, professional firms by now have a better handle on it, but there's still a lot of unknown out there. And so that may slow down some of the process of companies, trying to reply and wanting to know what the process would be. And the process will, I imagine, will probably be an interview conducted through Zoom, by the parties, both the interviewers and the interviewees may be all separately in a meeting such as this to do some evaluation work.
Now, will you require a bid bond and performance bond for this contract?
Well, at the moment we're just looking for the RFQs. They'll provide qualifications to be the firm that would be hired, and what that'll mean that is we'll narrow it down to one firm that the EDC board will select, and at that point the hiring is a negotiated process.
Okay.
So this is kind of something that I found really hard to deal with, is that you don't talk about price when you're talking about hiring somebody until after you've decided to hire them. And if you can't come to an agreement on price, then you might go to the second choice. But generally speaking, qualifications are more important than price when you're talking about government contracting.
Well, but even putting the RFQ out, you got to have the qualifications for the contractor. Because we have had companies come in and do bad jobs on projects, and we were left holding the bag.
Right. So this one would be all about how good they are.
Yeah.
And I think it would be where Richard, would we be checking their references?
Yeah, between Dave and I, they'll provide references, and then we will be contacting those ourselves directly. So, for whatever cities or other governmental entities that they've done similar work. And so that lets us have that one-on-one conversation with them. If they're in the regional area, it may be something that we choose to go out and look at because of the importance of this work.
Richard, you might want to check with, I'm just curious, you might want to just check with Navasota. My understanding is whoever did that did a phenomenal job, but, and I'm not saying just look at them, but you may want to go over there and check and see the end product.
Yeah. Navasota is one of the names that comes up, it's come up multiple times in some of these conversations. So, And while I've driven through the city on numerous times, I've not gone there just to specifically look at the areas more than driving through, but I do know I've had a favorable image of some of that area.
Well,
I think
timeline, I think time really is of the essence because it could get away from us. So let's definitely shoot for, having everything maybe back in by October so we can kind of go through a vetting process.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that's what we were looking for, if the board is agreeable.
I would, and I think Tom's right. There are some really good downtown projects that have been done both here and near to here. I know Ennis had one within the last maybe 5 years that has also gotten quite a bit of good publicity. So I'm sure they've had, project or the designers are obviously the first step in that. So
Yeah.
perhaps we could identify ones that have had good planning and ask them to take a look at it rather than just putting it on the website and hoping that people look at it.
Yeah, I definitely would want to be, participating in that way, that if there's examples out there that we know are positive, whether it's some we already know about here on staff or if some of you who have observed items, we'd be happy to contact those entities over there, find out who their designers were, and just, make a contact that way to see if they would be interested in submitting.
Hey, Richard, is the thoroughfare projects something completely different? Will we even entertain that? I know we talked about it with planning and zoning. Where are we on that?
That's not going to be part of this immediate portion.
Yeah, okay.
Question for you, Richard, on the looking at design concepts too here. I'm assuming we've worked something out or we've got input from the businesses that are down McGowan on doing a pedestrian street as opposed to automobile ingress, egress to their businesses.
There's still more discussions that are going to have to take place down there. One of the things from this design, here that what I was recalling was it's something that could be multiple use. Right now McAllen has a multiple use. It obviously looks just like a street, but it's something that we close up periodically, for events.
Correct. And that's, I'm assuming those are paver bricks that are in there, probably a few years old. We're going to try to salvage that or incorporate, or?
Well, you're talking up near the community center, and certainly those areas with that and the other materials like that. That's something that we can talk with the design company. I'm certainly in favor of preserving good materials where you can help keep the costs down.
Right,
Well,
and Dan, so some of the work that was done that's in the RFQ was done by students who were using their imaginations without necessarily the break of practicalities of reality attached to it. So, they one of them, they envisioned McCown being permanently closed, and that was basically not done with the city's overlay on top of that. So what we had looked at is using an option that would make it a more pedestrian friendly and attractive when closed, but to keep it as a regular road that
Right.
can be driven on.
Yeah, I was there at their presentation. There was some, I knew that was just, they were throwing out whatever they could, but, and nice presentation.
And some of them were great, and some of them were kind of, not completely aware that some of it was public property and some of it was private property. But, that was, I think we wanted to give them no limitations so that they could really use their creativity.
Right. And on Liberty Street, our question would be, I've seen a couple different concepts on that as far as, I haven't gone over and measured the easement or the right of way, but there's some really nice looking things with buffers between pedestrians and traffic. And I just don't know if we have enough room to do that and park.
Yeah, well, one of the things that I think we want to look at on parking is go with the angled parking where we can, and that reduces the amount of space needed, between the sidewalk and the roadway. And so, there's a lot of measuring to do and planning to do, obviously, but with some of the right, a little bit of creativity there, some design work here, I think a lot of it really ends up being doable.
I guess we'll figure out what the state owns through there and then what we own. Or
Right. And certainly, we're going to have to be plugged in with TxDOT, throughout this process before we can actually get it to building. And that's one of the important elements here is also, and an element of time is, this area, with regard to Liberty, is part of future expansion and future design work for TxDOT. So, if we're out in front of that with our planning, it helps us better approach TxDOT.
But I think it's also a key consideration for the qualifications of the design firm is, have they successfully coordinated well with TxDOT in the past, and have they been able to get some creative ideas past the Dr. No, who seems to be in charge of our region. Because I think everything is possible as long as it fits, but convincing TxDOT that it's a good idea is definitely going to be a professional challenge that it's possible our design firm could add to the mix.
I don't have a problem with the president of MEDC signing off on the final. I would like to see, before it goes out, maybe the different members on the board seeing the final product before it goes out, or Rebecca signs off on it. I don't think we have to meet. I think just maybe an email attachment.
Yeah, and I think as long as you guys would reply to Richard individually, that'd be absolutely fine. Y'all could each give him any comments. Just nobody hit the reply all button.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and I'm definitely not trying to do this in a vacuum, so I certainly want to keep the board informed.
Right, and this isn't an item that obligates the MEDC to anything. So it's really just a summary of what we're looking for and asking people to come to our beauty contest.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the most it really obligates us to is receiving the submissions. The EDC board could always choose not to conduct interviews if it felt these didn't meet what they're looking for.
Right, but I think obviously for to keep our reputation as serious, to be being serious about the project, we need to, if not go forward, at least do the best job we can with our RFQ, so we get the submissions that we are hoping for.
Yes, ma'am.
So since this isn't an action item, with your permission, board, we'll just move on to item number 6, update on social media marketing.
Last month, the MEDC board reviewed the draft social media marketing plan, approved some social media related budget expenditures. These expenditures included social media controlling software. So we utilized that for a Hootsuite account to be opened, and that was used to schedule control social media posts, and start to plan those going out. I'm trying to grab the screen share so I can post something for you on the social media. Show that we had increased interactions and ability to reach the public over this time. There were large increases in page views, page likes, the reaching of the post, and the engagement. And I'm not sure how many videos it refers to that had over 3-second views, but obviously those are up. But I think the actions on the page was down a bit by 2, but we seemed to reach a whole lot more people, or had a whole lot more engagement, and that's the goal we were shooting for. And so, yeah, I think utilizing this method going forward, we're only going to be better into how we manage to reach those people. And I'm trying to then put another item up, which is the groups that we are reaching.
I don't think your screen is sharing, Richard. We didn't see that last one.
You didn't see it?
No, I did.
Oh,
Oh.
gotcha. I don't know why I'm not, you know what? Mine is weird. Oh, there it is. It was fine.
Okay, the one I'm showing now, is the more the demographic information. We skew towards women approximately 4-to-1. Over half of the people are in the between the ages of 35 and 54, and so the majority are have a Montgomery address, with the next largest group being a Conroe address. Those locations I don't think are a big surprise. The Woodlands are our third largest group by number, but only slightly ahead of Dobbin, who is geographically closer to us. I do think this shows that, reaching out into the Woodlands area, if we can do that with some targeted appeal, may have a lot of potential for us. But right now, in the situation we're under with the pandemic, obviously people are probably more prone to be looking closer to home. And while I normally expect, the Montgomery address would be the majority of what we have, I'm certainly going to expect that as people are looking closer to home currently. And so what I wouldn't necessarily have expected straight up was such a huge split in gender being 4-to-1. But when you have an audience out there, it helps you to know who your audience is, partly so you can put out things to reach who your audience is, and partly so you can help grow your audience. And so those are the two items I had to add on for you at this time related to the social media posting. I also we looked at some options on video recording equipment. We hadn't yet purchased that, but we're looking to do that in the next month, and then start a plan on, working towards some of our own videos in-house.
So during the month as well, just looking at what was happening on Facebook, the Montgomery's birthday happened, and that was an extremely successful post without any advertising that reached over 10,000 people and picked up, I think, a number of likes. And then there was a post that did really well on all of our restaurants being open, despite the increase in the guidance on bars. And so that was the big driver during the month, is two big posts that each had over 10,000 views. So it's sometimes difficult to figure out what's going to do well and what doesn't.
Yeah, I think that's probably always going to be a bit of a mystery to us, is knowing what will work better than something else. Certainly people are looking, for certain kinds of information, and then other things, like you're saying, related to the birthday, something that is probably in most people's minds just good, honest fun and something happy, and so they enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions related to the social media marketing update?
None here.
All right, then, with your permission, we'll move on to item number 7, consideration and possible action to approve purchase of radios for use by city personnel. Richard?
All right, during the initial Christmas parade planning meeting, it was discussed city personnel working to set up, clean up, and monitor, the festivals might benefit with the uniform set of communication radios. Montgomery Police Chief Anthony Solomon identified the radios that are attached and, that he recommended for this use. What I really didn't expect on these, I guess, was the price tag associated with them. So, I mean, these are obviously a good quality unit that, we have all the equipment we need to communicate from around the city. and, I think is something that the city would benefit from, I guess. Question I have from the EDC board, is this something that you would like to look at supporting, or would you, like to look at some other options as well? I mean, we obviously have a little time relative to the Christmas parade, but there, are other events the city will have over time as well. So we want to make sure we get the right units that'll work well.
But for 12 radios, and it looks like extremely high quality, this is actually a very good price.
It does. I work with Northwest Communications. My question is, these are not walkie-talkies. These are hard mounted.
Right.
Look at the brackets, lightning arresters. So these are actually going in the units themselves, not to be carried by the officers at the festivals.
These are not for the police officers. These are for city personnel, the people who are running parades or festivals, to communicate between city and festival staff, setting up, cleaning up. So the city has some way to communicate with the festival personnel, the parade personnel, police officers, whoever's out there.
So we're mounting these in city vehicles, I'm assuming, and it looks to me like we're going to have our own frequencies. This is basically like a back channel, car to car is what we use in the law enforcement industry.
Yes, these will be on their own separate frequency for that communication.
Right, correct.
Right. I mean, I guess the thought was that, like somebody who's in charge of the lost child protocol would be able to, somebody says, hey, we've got a lost child. Who do we call? The lost child person is on the frequency channel, or, something else happens, get in touch with the organizer, rather than having a list of numbers with strange, people calling you and not being able to get in contact with somebody because they can't hear their phone ringing, or it doesn't, it's in a part of the city where it doesn't, go through, or whatever the issue is. But you're right, Dan, if the price includes mounting, that's silly.
Well, yeah, they're hard mounted units. I'm just wondering why they're not petitioning something more of a portable unit. 12 handheld walkie talkies that report back to a repeater or a base wherever it's mounted.
Yeah.
Because I wouldn't think they'd be all sitting in the car.
Yeah.
I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, I would think none of them would be in a car.
Yeah. Under the mounting, that's with the quantity of one. And so I think that was for the base unit.
Oh, okay, so that's
Unit,
one
so-
that's one stable unit. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay.
These are 12 handhelds then. Yeah,
Right.
that's
Yeah. And at a base price for the handhelds, what is it, $655? It's pricey, but it's not outrageous for a high quality radio.
no.
I mean, these are not items that are going to break, if they're inadvertently dropped. Obviously I wouldn't recommend trying to hard strike them with anything, but they're good professional quality. So.
And Becky, can you explain the discussion that we had during the parade meeting on renting these out to festival organizers?
Well, we had talked about the possibility of, or the need for every festival and event having this type of communication, and then using this as, equipment that is, everyone has to use it. You put a deposit down and possibly a rental price on it too. So that was just
during
kind
a
of
festival.
Right. During, say $250 or something like that, which seems perfectly logical, reasonable if you've got a professional quality communication system, and eventually that could pay for the cost of it. It doesn't seem outrageous anyway, of an idea, but I'm kind of mercenary on things like that.
But that way, Richard could always be in contact with the festival organizers during the festival. Or any staff who needs to be in communication during a festival with the people in charge, to go out and try to find them or call them.
And last year, for example, with the Christmas parade, we had a large number of people in a fairly tight area, when all the setup was being done. Almost every one of those people has a cell phone. Many of them are on their cell phones. When you have a situation like that, relying on cell communication can get a bit iffy. And so this would allow any communication we have from personnel to personnel be pulled off of the cell line and be on a direct line of communication, not be reliant on the cell phone technology in the area that's being flooded with other people using it, posting pictures, on phone calls and things like that.
So that's what we currently do. We rely on just cell phones. That's how different festival people involved in the festival. We don't have anything currently at all. It's a question.
Okay. No, we don't have a separate radio system like this. I mean, the police department obviously has its radios, and the
Okay.
police does have some involvement with some of these in terms of setting up and security, but they're not everywhere that all of our other personnel are.
Okay. Would they have access to this frequency during festivals?
Yeah.
The police?
If at the times we choose to provide this to them and have them participate, we can provide them the radios and they can participate as
Okay.
some of these units.
Well,
That would really
with the-
be a festival by festival decision as to how many are needed with the various personnel.
with the frequency here, anybody could add on to it. The police department could just plug in that frequency into their scanner and they could monitor anything that's going on.
Okay. So what events do we anticipate these being used at? I mean, Christmas festival, I'm assuming whatever the October festival is, if we have them by then. I mean, pretty much any festival or just any event downtown, large event?
Yes, sir. Pretty much any festival or any large downtown event that is requiring city personnel to be available for setup, cleanup. It'll allow us to be entirely off of the cell system and onto a set system like this.
Okay.
I mean, some of them obviously would be smaller, might not need all the units for that, but for any of them, it'll have that ability.
Where would they be kept, maintained at City Hall?
We had talked about keeping them over secured at the police department.
Okay.
But obviously, regardless of whether they would or wouldn't be there, we would keep them someplace safe.
Okay.
And is Northwest offering some kind of an insurance policy, warranty, or anything like on these radios after a couple years on the electronics part of them? Or
I don't know the answer to that, but I will look into that.
And Richard, would you limit the amount of radios that's given to the organizers, 1 or 2 per?
I think that would be something that we would decide on a case-by-case basis. I mean,
Yeah, and someone from the city would be in charge of making sure we got them back.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. They wouldn't be released to just anyone, and there would be some follow-up. If they were going to be released, to the festival personnel, we would obviously want some sort of a deposit or surety.
I was going to say, I think rented cars that were worth less than this.
I think I paid less I did pay less for my first car than that.
Well, I think the problem you have, Richard, is if you let it be an option for them, they can easily decline. So would that be a requirement? Particularly if they got to put up a deposit.
Yeah, well, it's something we discussed briefly in one meeting. We hadn't really decided whether or not, I guess that would be required of festivals or something that would become available. We had some short-term discussion on that. We weren't really trying to outline policy so much as trying to outline some of the potential needs for the radio. It is something that we, with the EDC board could look at setting forth going forward with a uniform event policy.
Well, I think it would be more related to the police department, since it got a lot to do with their ability to get in touch with and the organization and the smooth running of and security of events. I'd rather have it be at least them decide what their requirements are before the EDC does anything, because the EDC is really just an umbrella, not an implementation arm. It would really be the police department, public works, city management to decide what they feel that they need from organizations doing events in the city.
I guess that would be consistent with a lot of what the EDC has approved before, because expenditures, some of the past expenditures by the EDC in terms of working with the various events, that support work has really been funneled back towards city and city personnel for things like security.
Right.
So are you coming to the board looking for a motion to approve this?
Yes, sir. That's why it was put on the agenda. Now, expenditures of $10,000 or more, also have to be approved by city council for confirmation.
Especially when it's specifically not in the budget of the EDC, which it was not in the 2019-2020 budget for this particular line item. So it would need to be specifically approved.
So if we do have the EDC's approval, then we can take this item to the city council. And I believe, because you did have, funds available for event planning that are not being utilized for the current fiscal year, I believe that's where we would draw these funds from. And so they would be then applied towards future events, obviously with these radios being used that way.
So that would be line item 56434, events-other.
I believe so. I lost that page in my book, but.
I have them all memorized, Richard. It's fine.
All right, then yes.
I would like to see some sort of rental as just kind of it's a cost that MEDC is paying upfront so that people can use something that's affordable throughout the lifespan of the equipment. But I think, like Tom said, and it's an absolute requirement for a deposit. And people when they take it, the organization is responsible for the return in good condition. I mean, this isn't the business card that, gets passed around, and if somebody rips it, that's no big deal.
Well, and I don't see why we couldn't put that into place. It certainly would be essential for, event to have key staff there that is in direct communication with some of our own staff and, of course, law enforcement as needed. And I don't see why we can't make that a part of the policy going forward once we would have these in place.
I'd be fine with, the city working out, how many radios need to be used by how many people. I don't know if 12 is the right number. That might be too many. So maybe work out how many you think you need for the largest event and work backwards. But again, as long as MEDC gets the rental money, since we upfronted the purchase money.
I think 12 is not a bad number, given some of the circumstances that can happen, drop, busted, lost. So you would need backup.
Well, certainly for the bigger events like the parade, I could see 12, extra volunteers, the wine festival, who knows for the Meals on Wheels event.
Yeah.
That looks like it'd probably be pretty large.
Last year's flag festival, we were spread out over a fairly wide range for all day. If you have something else like that, that's citywide, 12 radios is probably just enough to be able to do that.
Right.
Now, Richard,
Well-
what type of service contractor they give us to maintenance and maintain the batteries and whatnot? Do we just buy them and we stuck with them? They're offering a service contract.
Partly broke up there, but I think I understood you well enough. It's like I didn't get any of the information on on a service contract with those, but if that's something the board would like me to inquire and bring back, I could certainly do that for a future meeting.
They got to be maintained.
I don't think we're in a time crunch here, so we could definitely get answers to these questions and bring it back.
Okay, so thus far I have down for questions, talking about a service contract as well as a long-term warranty, for them. Are there any other questions someone would like me to make sure we bring back?
Yeah, what's a trip charge for $85? What is that, so the guy can deliver them to us?
I'll be happy to inquire.
I'm curious. All right.
Assuming
Yeah,
that goes away if we purchase.
Exactly. if we're buying $14,000 worth of radios, don't they come out for free?
Yeah, I mean, I might charge you only $60 to go pick them up for you if they're in Houston.
Now, Richard, do they also come with lithium batteries?
Oh, I'm sure.
That is what I expect, but I will put that on my list to make sure I get a clear answer for you.
Can we not use the repeater that the PD already has?
Possibly not.
I don't know if that's limited to their frequency or only one at a time, but I can certainly make the inquiry.
I don't know. Dan, do you know the answer to that?
Yeah, that's yeah, it looks to me like this. I'm not sure what the police department's on, but you got a frequency of 450, which is normally what we call a mid-range. More construction companies and things like that run on that.
Okay.
So we
Well,
may
again,
not use their repeater, so.
if we have a meeting in August, I think that's plenty of time to, we don't have anything coming up until possibly Wine Festival in September.
Richard, assuming, given the go-ahead, this thing's not going to take months to order and come in or anything like that, it's probably something they can get fairly quickly.
I would expect so. This is all regular off-the-shelf type items. I did add to my list to make an inquiry into the delivery window for it.
Okay.
So, okay, I've got a list of a number of questions here. We'll get some clarity on that and then plan to bring that back at the next meeting.
Great.
Sounds good.
Thank you. All right, with the board's approval, then we'll move on to item 8A and 8B, city development report, 380 agreement summary, and the engineer's report.
Okay, well, this month's report finds the city 4 months into a global pandemic that's reshaped the way we interact with the world around us. That's literally the first statement on the report, maybe a bit dramatic, but 12 months ago, I wouldn't have expected kind of the world that we are in today, but yet here we are. Most of the businesses in the city have found ways to, reopen their clients. Some at reduced capacity, others have changed the way they operate. It's like 12 months ago, I wouldn't have, I would have just been happy Chick-fil-A had opened. I wouldn't have expected they'd be delivering food to your door if you ordered it for a nominal charge. And they're not the only restaurant out there offering, some form of delivery. A lot of businesses, have, grocery stores, have a lot of people are doing online ordering and pickup. The key to that is that the businesses have been responsive to the needs of their customers and the situation that we find ourselves in. And with that flexibility, they're finding ways to succeed and to continue marketing to their customers. Residential home building, has increased over the last month. There's 2 new subdivisions under development in the city. Commercial development continues to move along, and city personnel continues to work with, both on both the commercial and the residential end of development that are there. As you look through the report, there's some items in there that we have condensed downward. We're trying not to put, anything in here that's not really necessary. At the same time, on the second page, first full page of the report, in the middle of the page with the reference to the central business district, we're highlighting the business ends in there to draw attention to it. With the shops of Montgomery and some of the other locations, we're including, highlighted maps to show the areas that are in there. With regard to residential development, we had 7 homes completed in June, which is pretty much our, average for the last several months, for all of the year. And we issued 10 new home permits across the year. So, regardless of a pandemic situation, things are moving forward, especially with residential development in the area. One thing I wanted to touch on, it's information that came in after this report was printed on the home grant, referred to the being able to, before the end of this month, being able to close on the final home, the 4th home that we had coming up. That date was set for this coming Friday. So that is information that just wasn't available, at the time of the printing of the report. And there's some references in here about preparing the RFQ for the downtown improvements, which we discussed earlier today. And we're carrying forward with the business opening list in the year for this year. And there's 2 new businesses that were added to the report. One of them, Beauty Babes, I think it was, but they really moved from a different location within the city, but they're now in their own standalone location. I know I just kind of glossed through there. Were there any questions from that element report before I moved onward? With regards to discussing 380 development agreements, it's been a while since the city has had a new Chapter 380 development agreement, and you certainly haven't had a new one be negotiated in the time of my employment, which is about 14 months. But I know there's some newer people on the EDC board, and I don't know who was here at the time of the last one. Just want to kind of start the discussion process, make sure people are on the same page, or at least, knowledgeable when the term Chapter 380 agreement comes up, that you at least, know what it refers to. Chapter 380 of the local government code is what authorizes municipalities to offer incentives that are designed to promote economic development. It provides for offering of loans or grants of funds or services, really gives the city and the EDC, a fair bit of flexibility into coming to an agreement. These agreements are really designed to, bring jobs to the area, increase economic development. I think, as everyone here is aware, increased economic development, leads to a likelihood of greater property and greater sales taxes. So it is not just to, it's to the benefit of the companies that you're working with. It's also to the benefit of the city and the city's residents. So, it's not necessarily that it has to be that there's only one winner in an agreement. There can be 2. Both sides of the equation in a good agreement really should benefit. The one item that's more recently come to the city's attention that the city has not used in the past is something called the direct payment permit for sales tax. Under this permit, companies that annually purchase at least $800,000 of taxable items, they obtain a permit from the state comptroller's office, which allows them through a certificate similar to a resale certificate to not pay the sales tax at the time of the purchase. They will remit those taxes with the report to the comptroller's office at a later date, and they designate all of those taxes and the entities under which those taxing authorities are at the time of that report. And at which point, with the 380 agreement, they would designate the Montgomery location for that, and thus ensuring that the city would receive the 2% its share for the city's share for all of those construction costs. And so that's what we're currently looking into, and currently looking to see. We believe there's benefit for the city there for large scale construction projects, and making sure the city is collecting shares of taxes that can come our way. The second page that I have in there really is a summary of some of our development agreements there. We have, Chris Cheatham for the Hills of Town Creek, which is an agreement, a 15-year agreement that's paid up through year 7. We have, with the Kroger Company right now, that's also a 15-year agreement. All of these agreements, have a maximum dollar, or at least a theoretical maximum dollar on them, and that's paid through year 2. And the Shops of Montgomery, we're actually preparing that was a 10-year agreement. We're preparing later this year, we're making the first payment on that one. It's like these all involve shares of the sales tax, and may involve property tax or impact fees or other items as well. I'm really not trying to make this a blow-by-blow discussion of each of these agreements, but I think I'm trying to give the overview so that all of you can have some ideas on just what some of these are, and maybe facilitate some of this discussion going forward.
Well, I personally would like to thank you for bringing this up. I've complained about this in the past, but Bob Curran and I are the only 2 people still sitting on the board who were on the board when the Kroger 360 and the Shops of Montgomery 360 were approved, and they were approved without the EDC's knowledge. The EDC president approved these agreements and did not bring them to the board to discuss or vote. And I threw a fit then, and I will continue to throw a fit. And this is why I've been pushing that it's very important that if the EDC president is on city council, they cannot vote on an EDC matter as a representative of the EDC, that there must be another member of EDC to speak for the EDC. So I appreciate you bringing this up. I think it's very important to be open and let the board know what we are committed to doing, and have a voice in doing that or not doing that. So I appreciate it very much, you explaining about these agreements so we all can understand what they are and how much they cost.
Well, it's my pleasure. I certainly didn't understand all of that background, and I've heard bits and pieces of things as I've been here. I personally think these types of agreements, they can have great value if they're applied correctly, and there's a lot of room for individuality, so that you can have a little creativity in terms of something that might work for one agreement might not work as well for the next. And so it allows you to be able to target and tailor them, to the situation, whether that situation has to do with the type of companies that you're working with, or maybe it has to do with something in the geographic area that has some specific needs that one area might have that another area might not. But I think y'all have to be kept well informed. I mean, not just the EDC board, obviously also the city council, and as those things happen, those discussions will also take place on council. But I think it's important that both parties are plugged into that.
Exactly.
And just to kind of comment, Amy, you said that the president couldn't vote, but really what you mean is that the president, if they're on council, shouldn't represent the EDC in any discussions offline. It should be the vice president, because the EDC and city council could have two different, not viewpoints per se, but really competing interests. It could be different viewpoints. And so the one person cannot represent both boards at the same time. So
Exactly.
You should have an independent person representing a single board when it comes up that the president of the EDC is also on city council.
Exactly.
Which I think makes sense, because the EDC is an independent body and not a complete subsidiary of city council.
Exactly. I think it's important that when these discussions are occurring and the negotiation between the city council and EDC, that the EDC has a voice in
Right.
the discussions, not through a city council person.
Well, and I think also, since the EDC board is a completely different makeup, it's got different skills and viewpoints that really add to the perspective, and you can really get more value from bringing in more minds than just looking at it from a single viewpoint who might have a different reason for wanting to go gung-ho on something than a board that's looking at it from a variety of different business points.
All right, and as we go on, whether it's later on, or if some on this board have some specific questions that might be appropriate for an offline communication because you're unaware of some of the details, I'm always happy to have some of those conversations. If there's questions about what was done in the past, I'll be happy to look those up if I'm unaware. But certainly going forward, if the EDC is part of that agreement, then my intention is to keep y'all fully informed and engaged.
I appreciate that.
So, are there any other questions on the topic for 380 agreements?
None here.
Okay. Then, after that, we have a copy of last month's engineering report. I guess instead of really reading through that, I'll ask if there's any questions. There are several projects that moving forward, and one of the items that's, I guess if I start down that road, I'm going to start going project by project. But if there's any questions you have, I'll be happy to try to answer those. We've got, so we got the GLO project, I guess, that I want to touch on, that is, is getting the initial watershed study done, and we should have, you have a report back to council on that within the next couple of months. So. Other than that, that is, I think that's the conclusion of the development report for tonight.
Okay. Does anyone have any additional questions for Richard on anything covered in item 8, A or B?
Nothing on item 8. Richard, I see you guys are making some progress on where it looks like a car hit the wall in front of the community center. I'm assuming that's being addressed.
Yes, sir. There was a car that came through. I'll just say it came through at high speed, and we're currently waiting on insurance purposes on that one. I've for the immediate time being, we're probably not immediately going to reconstruct that because there had been some discussion about, especially now that that wall is damaged, should, I think we need to have some discussion going forward in the future. Should we take some action to move the whole wall in some that could have a dual purpose of, one, being a bit more protective of the wall, while two, may also open up some room to parking in the area. And so we're taking action to kind of protect the materials there. We obviously have to work through the insurance process to be able to get, payment for the damages there. And if it is determined that we want to move that wall in, they put up some minor pylons there to help be protecting the wall and beyond that, the community center from high-speed traffic. It may also be that there's room to create parking spaces there, and we know parking is important in that area.
Good. Sorry to get off subject.
That's okay. You get me talking on any of those things around that area, I'll just probably keep going on until somebody turns off my microphone.
Well,
Okay,
Richard,
anyone else?
Richard,
Ernest?
can you? Yeah, Richard, I just want to commend you on being very detailed and just doing a wonderful job informing us on a lot of information. Believe it or not, I need a recorder when you're talking. But you're doing a wonderful job.
Thank you, Arnett. I appreciate that. I can't claim to know it all here. I've got a very good staff that helps keep me on top of things. If it was just me, I'd be relying on the whiteboard on my wall with items that I'm checking off and moving along, and my staff tries to keep me on task with the items that fall past my list and can help me with the research, because this is not a one-person job here. There's no way I can do this
The other
job
guy.
by myself. It's a team effort here.
We see
Yeah.
Dave. We know he's the backbone too.
Yeah.
Well,
You too.
he can secretly be the brains of the operation.
Yeah.
All right, so we don't have any executive session on for today. Do we have anything for item number 10, board inquiry? Is there anything that anyone would like to see next month addressed during the meeting?
Well, I've got some questions from the previous meeting. I didn't specifically hear them brought up, but they may have been. Richard, do you have an update on the reason for the 14% sales tax increase? Have you gotten any more data on that?
I think one, that we did have some business. We had some businesses that did well. We also had some items that may have been one-time purchases, or they may have been related to online purchases that were being done. We just get the name, like there was a pretty good amount of items that were furniture or home furnishings. What I can't tell you is how much of those may have been, individual purchases, or were they one large purchase for someone doing a larger location. But, grocery stores, hardware stores continue to be strong. Fast food or takeout food continues to be strong. And there was probably some natural growth in there as well.
And you were going to give us an update on the possibility of taxable construction costs?
The taxable construction cost, that I did cover that, but it was probably such a tangent that I barely would have caught it. The taxable, that was where I was referring to the direct payment permit.
Okay.
For large construction projects, that is how we may be able to capture those. There's going to have to be some coordination on the construction end, and we're currently exploring how best to do that. There's probably going to be a little bit of an education process to make it work at first, but I suspect after we've done it once or twice, it can be boiled down into a fairly straightforward process.
I'm sorry, I just didn't catch it the first time. I apologize.
Well, Well, I didn't connect it, so don't worry about that. That was, that's at least half my fault for not quite directly connecting it there.
And Richard, may I ask for our next meeting to include a specific process / timeline for the RFQ, when the deadline is, how we're going to go about evaluating them, and the deadline for approval, and when the MEDC will meet?
All right,
What
I'm
meeting
making
you
notes on
expect?
that. I'll make sure we have have the estimated timeline and calendar for that process through approval for you next month.
Okay, that'd be great. That might be when our last meeting is of the year, and then work it back for what time date we need to put it on as a submission deadline.
All right. Yeah, I don't see any reason why we can't have that.
Yeah, when we will give some more thought to some of the distressed properties and how we're gonna go about cleaning up the thoroughfare from 149 to 1097 and other areas that need attention. Have we sent letters to the people? What are our plans moving forward in reference to addressing these issues? I know as a board, we don't want to be heavy-handed, but at some point in time, the development improvement in downtown is really a moot point if you can't get it all done.
Yeah, that's something we've discussed several times in here, and it's fallen back a couple of times. But let me look into exactly where we are, and I'll give you a call in the next couple of days on that, Arnett, to fully update you.
Yeah.
And then I'll bring a report back at the next meeting for the full EDC.
Okay, sounds good.
And since this is the July, May meeting, do we have any plans to start our budget workshops? For next year's fiscal budget?
Yeah, I'm planning that. I was going to plan at the probably at the next meeting, or actually contact you before the next meeting about setting up some dates for that.
Right, because I know that this previous year, things got very tightly scheduled because we have to do our part, then send it to city council to have them approve before we vote on it. And so the earlier we can start, I think, the better.
I think Amy's right, because we need to approve our temporary budget. Then it needs to go to city council for approval. And then our final one is where we have, so that would be September, so we need to have it done by August. So we need to have our workshops between now and the August meeting, so we get to our preferred number. So we can vote on it
Yeah,
at the August meeting.
I appreciate you bringing that up, because I was forgetting the timeline that we have to get that out of EDC to council and then back to EDC. So thank you for the reminder on that. Let me look at the calendar, and then send, we can identify a couple dates, and then plan, email out, and we can set up a workshop for that. And looking at my calendar, probably sometime in the next couple of weeks then, and make sure we get far enough ahead so that we can have a draft budget to you for the upcoming meeting.
That would be good.
Your budget's only a couple pages long, so it's not going to be, terrible, but it is obviously very important.
Right, and I think Julie's done blowing our minds with accruing for future payments and things like that. So hopefully it's more policy things that are easy to understand. So things that we want to do for the coming year.
Okay. Well, I'll make sure we bring our on staff financial person Anthony along, so those two can talk numbers back and forth, at their high level.
Maybe we shouldn't.
No, but we'll identify the dates and before too long and set up a workshop here so that we have enough time to make that work though.
Thank you.
I think we traditionally have not had the bookkeeper in our workshop just because, like you said, our numbers have not been so complicated that it's been, once we work out from the top, how much revenue we have to spend, we know what our transfers are administratively. I think it's been, I won't say a piece of cake, but it's been possible for lay people to put together, the rest of it with rounding,
Okay, and I do think it would be fine for Julie and Anthony to connect together with regards to how to set up the process of making sure the approvals are taking place. That is not something we necessarily all have to be at the workshop listening to, because that's more of a technical matter.
I don't feel the need to hear it. Yeah.
All right, we'll identify a couple of dates and then we'll get those out
Okay.
short.
I think in the past we've had 2 workshops.
I think so.
You think you want them both before the August meeting and then we approve something to go to council?
Yes.
And if council doesn't approve, then we obviously need to talk afterwards and put something together for the September meeting. So the
That gives
possibility
us
of,
time, because if they send it back, then we still have time to sit down and make changes and send it back
Yep.
to them for a vote.
Okay.
Yep. So it has to, we have to be done. It has to go for council's first September meeting, and just in case, or wait. No, it has to go to their second
Their
August meeting. Yep. And then if it has to come back to us, then we have to send it back for their first September meeting.
Mhm.
Yeah, I forget the timeline is similar to the council one, but it's shorter. Well, it may not shorter, but it has to be front loaded ahead of the
Right.
council one, so.
Yep.
So,
As soon as possible.
I mean, I don't think it's been a huge problem in the past, but it'd be terrible to end up in a situation that could be avoided
Right.
just by not moving things ahead a couple of weeks.
well, I'm just scanning through my online calendar. I don't think that's going to be a problem making that happen, so.
Okay.
And, yeah, so we'll go through, we'll identify a couple of dates and then we'll circulate those and we'll make it happen.
Okay.
So thank you for the reminder on that.
Okay, anything else for board inquiry? Otherwise, I will.
Adjourn.
Oh,
Sorry.
okay. We have a motion to adjourn. Do I hear a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. That motion passes unanimously, and we are adjourned at 7:24 p.m. Thank you, all of you, for participating and having such a great discussion. Thank you, staff, Dave and Richard.
Yeah,
Thank you,
thank you.
guys.
Good night.
Have
Thank
a
you,
good
Sue.
evening.
Good night.